I think one of the things I hate more than almost anything else, I don't even mind being disappointed. I don't even mind people lying to me. What I hate is the patronizing use of authority. Um, and I will bark back. I found that as I get older, I have less and less patience for people who play games with words and and who think they're in a position where simply because they're given a certain amount of authority and they have a certain amount of power, that they also somehow or other possess the truth and that no one else does. And it's a mirage, and we're being pushed to believe in a mirage once more that's been planned and conducted by just these sort of people, the individuals who are playing around with words. The US has mediated what it hesitantly refers to as a Black Sea ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine following weeks of disjointed communication, selective diplomacy, and underground talks in Riyadh. And the agreement to refrain from attacking each other's energy infrastructure and a secure passageway for commercial shipping is supposedly a sign of a halt in hostilities. But in the realm of this sort of global politics, timing is as crucial as ever, and this agreement, as it stands, comes while Ukraine is experiencing a string of incredible tactical victories, despite the serious handicap of Trump's removal of shared intelligence for a day or two, and Putin's or Russia's ability to leverage that, and also either to hijack or to hack into, or even to be given access to Starlink. And such cross-border incursions that Ukraine has made into the Belgorod region and the spectacular destruction of Russian equipment and helicopters well beyond the frontiers is something to be applauded. These are hardly the actions of a country in decline. These are the actions of a military that is still engaged in valiant, clever, and yes, effective combat. But despite Ukraine's rapid progress, Russia seems to be holding out a hand for peace on its terms while holding out a wish list for the removal of sanctions. Restoring access to SWIFT, lifting sanctions on Russian banks, resuming trade in grain and fertilizers are the unambiguous demands of the Kremlin. And this is more of a shakedown than a ceasefire. Instead of peace, Moscow is looking for economic revival. And the currency of international legitimacy is being demanded as ransom. Now, nobody is keener to have Russia back on the international stage as a friend, as an ally, as a partner, as a colleague. I've been to Russia. I've worked in Russia. I know what Russia's like. And I like Russia, by the way. Just before the bots come out and say that I'm Russophobic, I'm not. But I am a realist, I'm afraid. I'm a Russian realist. And I'm also a realist about the Kremlin. I've spoken to people from the Kremlin. I know exactly how they think, and I know exactly what they say. They whisper in your ear something because they think you're going to be impressed by their audacity, by their brutality, by their effectiveness, and by their cunning. I'm not impressed. I remember talking to a man who looks like a toad. He was the leader of the Duma or something, called Pyotr Tolstoy, and he seemed pleased that he had single-handedly identified Jewish groups desecrating Orthodox churches. I thought that was rubbish and told him so. And then he went on to talk about his great efforts to suppress LGBTQ plus activity across Russia. I thought that was rubbish as well. I mean, but he seemed to think that simply because I was in Russia, I would approve of this sort of heavy-handed activity. I don't. Mr. Zelensky is correct to express doubt about the current Russian position. Once more, he accuses Russia of lying, of course. That's what the Kremlin does, it lies. He's seen similar games before, so have I. Drone strikes after phony truces, the using strategic breaks to regroup. Within hours, ceasefires that have been signed have been broken. To understand that the Kremlin signs agreements for effect rather than commitment, much like an actor signs autographs, one hardly needs to remember Minsk I and II, which Russia broke. And now, like any liar, it accuses Zelensky and Ukraine of doing exactly what it's doing. And then there's Donald Trump, this self-styled peacemaker. He's not engaging in negotiations on behalf of the Ukrainian people, international law, or even the United States, it appears. He's anxious to be seen mediating peace without considering whether it will last, and therefore he's engaging in a complex game of optics. Does it look better like this or like this? Like this or like this? Can you see that clearly now? And after a while, you just don't know. Russia might be dragging their feet. I've done that before, he said, displaying showmanship rather than statesmanship. He acknowledges imitating Putin's strategies as if it were a real estate transaction in New York rather than a life or death situation. This is life and death, to be clear. Trump is not acting as a mediator. He's enabling. He's even placating. A risky precedent is set by his readiness to consider Russian demands for sanctions relief before taking any decisive action, which enables an aggressor to impose conditions without first disarming. Ukraine continues to win in the meantime. And that's something that a lot of the mainstream news isn't covering. Over the past 72 hours, Russian aviation assets have been destroyed. Villages have been recaptured. Ukrainian troops have increased their presence in Belgorod. However, a partial maritime ceasefire that effectively restricts Ukraine's ability to push its advantage is politically sabotaging this battlefield momentum. If anything, it's a short-term truce that benefits the weary attacker rather than the nimble defender. What precisely is being frozen, we should ask? Perhaps more important to the military action in the Black Sea is Ukraine's momentum, influence, and moral standing. Russia receives time, relief, and the opportunity to change the story in exchange. Suddenly the victim of Western hostility, demanding justice and economic reality, back to what is normal. That's the one requesting submission rather than the criminal. It's extraordinary. We're currently dealing with an unprecedented reversal in reality. The opposing force is accused of being stubborn. See, the force that is being invaded is accused of being stubborn, while the invading power establishes the terms. Trump, on the other hand, quietly legitimizes the unlawful takeover of Ukrainian territory and repeats Kremlin propaganda while positioning himself as the sole guy who can bring about peace. Diplomacy is not what this is. This is a simulacrum, a stage-managed act designed for theatrical global drama and electoral advantage. Without a doubt, the world is witnessing the start of a new era, one in which those with the biggest missiles and the fewest scruples set terms, and peace is delayed to make room for aggression. Look at the size of my gun. We must remember, a ceasefire is not peace, and a broker is not a benefactor. If we take this forward, if we assume that Trump is right, we will have constructed peace on shifting sands rather than on firm ground. If we exchange principles for expediency and sanctions for silence, we mustn't get lulled into this nonsense. We mustn't be bought. Furthermore, we must not permit a former reality star to alter the course of Europe's most significant struggle in many decades. This is life or death for people on this side of the Atlantic, even if it's a toy and something distant for Trump and his gerbil.